Welcome to toy-polloi.
Hello and welcome to another video from toy-polloi, and in today's video we are going to be making some custom robes for a vintage Kenner Star Wars Chewbacca figure, because when you see Chewbacca in the Star Wars Holiday Special he is celebrating Earth Day, and to celebrate Earth Day he wears these lovely red robes. Now, as far as I'm aware, Kenner never produced a version of this figure with those robes on, so I thought it would be a really fun little custom project to do, and that's what we're going to be doing today. We are going to be making some custom robes for this vintage Kenner figure. So let's get on with the project. So here we have a vintage Chewbacca figure, and I'm often making capes for these because I think that there are so many sort of options and variations that Kenner could have done just with the addition of some capes, and Chewbacca is exactly one of those figures, because when he appears in the Holiday Special you see him wearing these lovely long red robes, and I always assumed that he was wearing those robes because Peter Mayhew, the actor who played Chewbacca, didn't want to wear the whole costume, and by wearing robes like that it just meant that he could wear the Chewbacca head, some hands and some feet, and the rest of him didn't have to bother wearing the whole costume. That's probably not true, but that's what I always imagined. So today let's make some custom robes for this Chewbacca figure so that he looks like he is celebrating Earth Day. It's something that I think Kenner really could have done very easily, and I'm sure that by the time I finish this we will have some robes that look just as good as the ones that you see in the Holiday Special. So the first thing we need to do is to make a pattern. Making a pattern for something like this should be pretty straightforward, so let's get a piece of paper, a ruler and a pencil, and we'll see what we can draw up. So I've now got myself an A4 piece of paper, I've got the figure, I've got a pencil and a ruler, and with this I should be able to draw up some plans and a pattern that we can make some robes from. I use the figure because that's how we're going to work out the scale that we need to make everything, and I have a ruler because on something like this it's just going to be a mirrored version. We need to mirror it left and right, and we need to mirror it top and bottom, so I only actually need to draw a quarter of it, and that's the first thing to do. I'm just going to draw a line down the middle of this piece of paper, just long enough that we can sort of get two figures essentially height wise, because we are going to be putting one figure at the bottom, then we'll flip it over and flip it left and right. It will become obvious as I draw it, and then we need to draw a line across as well, because we are only going to be drawing one part of this. So I'll draw it like that, and then I can get drawing and working out some shapes. And for this it really is just sort of doing it by eye. I've got a few pictures of the robes that he wears in the Holiday Special, and I'm going to rough that out and draw myself up a plan. So let me get on with that and I'll show you what the finished thing looks like. And here is my rough plan. It doesn't look like much, but I think this will actually turn into something that does look like those robes. And as you can see, I have only drawn a quarter of this, because what we're going to do is we are going to fold this paper in half, and then we can mirror it to get this half. And then we also need to flip this vertically, because basically the robes are going to be the same front and back with a hole in the middle. We're just going to have to sew up and down these arm seams. So what I'm going to do now is just fold along the lines that I've put here. I can just do this very quickly. So that will give us the vertical bit, and then if I fold along here as well, just fold that as neatly as I can, make sure everything is lined up. These are sort of rough patterns at this stage. In the end I will actually take this into Photoshop and draw up proper plans, but when you're doing a prototype like this you can get away with doing very little. So I've now got this piece of paper folded. If I take my scissors and cut along that line there, cut that piece off, we'll cut along this line here as well, like so, and we can cut this piece out. This is the sort of underarms, and then we'll cut along this piece here like that. Then I need to make a neck hole. I've just sort of marked something very roughly there because we just need something big enough that we can put Chewbacca's head through. So I'm going to very roughly cut this out. This is the bit that may change. This is the bit that I'm not 100% sure about. So let's just cut a thin piece out of this for now. We can modify that later. And now, hopefully, if I unfold this, everything should work out and we will have the full pattern for the cape. which is like that. Yeah, I think that is going to work. As I say, it doesn't look sort of like much at the moment. Maybe I can just do a quick test, see if his head will go through there. This is paper, so there's not much give to it, but if we can get his head through, you can start to see the sort of construction idea. I think that's going to work. So now we need to choose some fabric and get this cut out of fabric and do a bit of sewing and see what actually happens. This is my choice of fabric. I've got 3 different shades of toy knit or looped fleece. This is very similar to the material that they used on capes for Return of the Jedi era figures and some of the Empire Strikes Back sort of era figures. I think it's what I'm going to be using because it's certainly the closest to that sort of vintage feel. I've got 3 different colours of it. This one is a slightly more sort of subdued red, and I've got 2 different shades of a bright red. And looking at the images from the holiday special, I actually think this sort of subdued one is pretty close. So that is what we're going to be using. I will put a link in the description as to where I get this, but this will do really nicely. So I've got just about enough, I think, of this. I use this quite regularly because this is also the same fabric that you can use for the Emperor's Royal Guard. It's a very nice colour for that, but I think this should do. So I just need to cut this pattern out. I'm going to stick some double-sided tape on the back of this just so that I can place it onto here, nothing will move, and then we can get this cut out and start sewing. But yeah, this is a very nice material. I think it suits Chewbacca pretty nicely. And there we go, that is the material cut out, so we can now start sewing, and it should be a fairly simple bit of sewing because we've only got to sew along well, 3 edges, I think, really. As you can see, we've got the material here. This is the nice side, so the outside of the material, and this is the inside. What we've got to do is fold this top section down. So with the nice sides on the inside currently, we will turn this inside out at the end. We need to fold it like that, make sure everything lines up neatly. You can see it's starting to look like some robes. It's got that sort of correct shape to it, and it's got these nice sort of bat wing shapes, which is what you see on the original robes that Chewbacca wears. So line that up, and now what we've got to do is we've got to sew along this edge, so from the bottom of the skirt up to the underarms, and then we've got to go down the bat wing and then up to the top of the bat wing, but leave a little gap at the top, enough that we can put Chewbacca's hand through, and then do the same on the other side. So up this edge, down there, and up to the top, leaving a gap for his hand. Then once that's all done, we need to turn it inside out. So it's a fairly simple little cape once we've got the pattern right, but I think this will look really nice. So let's get sewing. I'm going to make sure this is all lined up as neat as I can. I found this thread in Mrs. TP's box of threads, and it's a pretty close colour, so I've already put some of that on a needle. Now just a bit of sewing. I've now sewn all around the edges, leaving the 2 little holes for Chewie's hands to go through. So the next stage is to actually turn this inside out so that it's around the right way. This is going to be a little bit awkward because we've also got to turn these sort of bat wing points inside out and try and get them as pointy as possible. So I'm just going to use a screwdriver to push all the fabric through and make sure I get it the sort of the shape that I want. It's going to take a few minutes to do and probably is not the easiest thing, but I'm sure we can do it. So let's get this turned inside out, and then we can put it on the figure and see what it looks like. As you can see, now that I've turned it inside out, it's starting to look like the Life Day robes that Chewie wears. We've got these long sort of bat wing sleeves. There's a hole at the top for his head, and obviously the end of the skirt is at the bottom there, and there's also holes for his hands to go through. So let's put this on the figure. This is the bit that may be a bit awkward because it's quite an odd shape to get onto one of these Star Wars figures, but I'm going to try by putting Chewie's arms up first, and then hopefully I can slot those arms through the new armholes just a bit like that, and then push everything through. Hopefully by the time we've rotated everything around, this will look like the robe. So let's do a little bit of a rearrange here, make sure everything's in the right place. And I think we are good to go. That looks exactly like what I wanted. So we've got the bat wings here that hang down when Chewie's arms are up, and then we've got the hole through the top there for his head to come through, and you can just about see his feet at the bottom, which if you look at the original images that I'm working from, that's pretty much all you can see of Chewie's feet at the bottom. So that I am very happy with indeed. His little hands poke through as well. I think that is a pretty good representation of the Life Day robes. And here we go. Here is the finished Chewbacca figure in his Life Day robes, and I'm really pleased with how this has turned out. It looks exactly like how I imagined right at the start of this. It's got that sort of Kenner style to it. The material really helps because it has that sort of Kenner feel, but it does look like something that they would have produced back in the day. And you never know, Hasbro may make something like this for the retro collection in future, but if they do, you probably saw it here first. I've now taken that pattern that I've made into Photoshop and I've worked up a full version of it. So if you want to have a go at making your own Life Day robes, then head on over to toy-polloi.com. You can grab the file from there. And if you want to get the same sort of material that I've used, I'm going to put a link to that in the description of this video. Hopefully you have enjoyed this video. If you have, then make sure to hit the subscribe button and tap the bell to be notified each time I upload a new video. And if you've really enjoyed it and want to help me out here at Toy-Polloi, then why not think about becoming a patron of the channel. You get early access to all of my restoration videos, plus access to exclusive video content, including the On the Cutting Mat series, where you'll see projects and restorations that you won't see anywhere else. So have a think about that, and thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching Toy-Polloi. Subscribe for more great videos.